Good evening and welcome to a late night tutorial. So this was requested quite a while ago, about maybe a month or two ago. Someone asked how to make beams. Now there are many ways to describe a beam, but ideally a beam is a flow of energy from your body continuously, or palm or foot or whatever you're thinking of. So it's actually pretty straightforward. I got some stuff set up already in Kung Fu Man that we're gonna go over, and then I'm gonna show you how to code it, even though I have it pretty much coded already, but some tweaks to make it look better. So first off, you need the character's animation of him shooting a beam. In Kung Fu Man's case, we're gonna use the Kung Fu Palm. This is the perfect pose for a beam, so we're gonna go with that. And then we need the actual beam itself, which I have a bunch of beams here, but I'm not going to use this one, it's too weird. I'm not going to use this one either. This one, if anybody can figure out where this is from, comment down below. So I'm going to use this one, and I also have this hit sparks here for it, and this giant one. If anyone knows where this is from, comment down below, because this is really huge. Like, I don't know what they were thinking when they drew this. Anyways, so you get your sprites, then you have to make your animation. So for Kung Fu Man, his triple Kung Fu Palm is going to be triple beam palm, which is not really triple because it's single. But this is the animation. The first frames are startup for the super pause, and then the beam comes out here in the 5th frame, and then the other frames are just the close moving for added effect. It's always good to have an effect. So when you play the animation, it looks like this. You can make it as long or short as you want to. This is how long I'm making it for the sake of tutorial. Then you have the actual beam, which is like this. I'm using this size of a hitbox. You can make it whatever size you want. Don't be stupid and make it like this. That's just ridiculous. And I'm actually using the cursor here as a reference point of how big to do it. Also, before I continue, as you can see here with the beam, I always like to access my beam, AXIS, right here at the start of it. Some people would put it like this, or like that, or any one of these other alignments, and it makes it very hard to do. Like I just undid that. Man, let me see. I gotta put this back into place. Yeah. If you put it here, it's easier to align. And it's easier to do everything to it pretty much. Even if you want to rotate it for whatever reason diagonally in any direction, even up, it's much easier to rotate here than it would be anywhere else. You have more control over it, essentially. So this is the beam, a few frames of startup so nothing is attacking anybody, and then the actual beam itself. Now the way this beam is animated, it's basically 3 frames over and over. So you get the start frame, then you got 1. See the loop start here. You got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Or if you look here, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. Over and over and over. I don't need to do this. I could just use the 3 and then use like the loop. Where is it? Here. And it will just loop infinitely, like so. But of course the beam needs an end. So this beam does not have an end, and I could, you know, scale it down by scaling the sprites down, or I can use Mugen to do it for me. So the one last thing before I get to coding, hit sparks. These are the generic laser beam hit sparks for Marvel vs. Capcom, and this beam is from one of those games, if you could figure out which one. But yeah, so these 3 frames are from it, and it plays like this. It's looping, so it looks a little funny, but it just plays really quickly on the person. So now, going to the command. So this is pretty straightforward. I mean, you have your super command. In this case, I'm doing it very simplified. Down, forward, X and Y, or down, forward, 2 punches, basically. And then going to your actual move, the command, down, forward, 2 punches. Command not in the air, or state type not in the air. Power has to be 1000 or greater, which is 1 gauge or more. You have to have control or you have to be in a combo condition, which is this. And combo condition could be, you know, light, medium, heavy, super, you know, something like that. And then state 3000. So here we go. This is the hyper move. Now this is the super pause, which I took out some stuff to it, but basically you have your pause code or your super pause code, whichever you want to use. I feel like using a pause code gives you more control over it. So you're pausing. Your move time can never exceed your actual time. This will give this will give you an error. So you always have to have a less move time than your actual time. So it's going to pause for 48 ticks. Kung Fu Man's going to move for only 11, which if you look at the timing for Kung Fu Man, by 11 ticks, it'll be within the first 3 frames, so he'll stop here. He'll move for 11 ticks and stop on this frame because it's more than 11 ticks. You have the super sound and power add to take away 1000 gauge. I could put it here, but the problem is if you get hit during startup, you lose the gauge. Whereas if you put it here, you don't lose the gauge until you actually start the startup. And then the effect of shining on the player, which could be whatever super spark you're thinking of. And that's that. So the best way to code a beam is by coding as a helper. Now it's pretty straightforward. Trigger 1 is your frame that you're starting on, which is, it's in the animation, it's frame 5 right here, as you can see. Frame 5. Helper type normal. You can remove this line in Mugen 1.0 and 1.1. You have to give it a name, so give it a name that's relative to what you're doing. I like to personally give it an ID number and a state number, very close to the state it's from. So if it's from 3000, I'll put 310. If it's from, you know, 1750, I'll put like 1760, you know. Position could be tricky, but this goes back to alignment of sprites. Now this value, the easiest way to get this value, and this is a trick I do nowadays, when you're aligning something to the character, just zoom out to 100%, which is not this, it's this. Move your hand over the character, the cursor, and if you look in the bottom left corner, you'll see the words position and a number, 62, -58. It is located right here. And as you move around, it pretty much gives you the access for that. So that's what I use to align things. And it says 6859. You know, whatever I measured was that. Sorry for the, you know, that season. Post IP1. Facing is the same as the player. Own palette means if you get hit, the helper will not take the same as your palette. So if you're like get burned or something, your helper won't catch fire. Superimpose move time is 0. This is necessary in case your opponent does a super. You don't want the beam to continuously keep going. So this is your helper. And then this is your helper here, the actual helper state. Okay, so most important things. Move type equals A because it's an attack. Animation 3010, which is this. And sprite priority is 3, so it's on top of the player. You don't want the beam to be behind the player and you see his hand above it. It looks odd. So now you have your hit def. This is very standard. The most important thing to know is your trigger, which is very important. Your attributes, which is important for other characters to react and, you know, work properly according to this. So this is a standing hyper attack. Damage is 23. Remember, it's a beam that hits multiple times. You don't want to use 100. That'll instantly kill somebody. And then guard damage, which I'll put 1. Animation type, I think this is something that should be a medium, but it's up to you. Next most important thing is pause time. I'm gonna leave it for one now, so you can see how it works, and then I'll show you later why you shouldn't change it from 1 count 1. This is your hit spark, so 10, 11, and 30, 11, and this is 30, 11 per hit. God spark, which is something else. That's straightforward. When you're doing a helper and you align it the way I showed you to align it, and your spark number, your spark XY, it's gonna be like, it could be 0, 0, or -10, so it's more on their body. But your Y could be 0. You don't have to align nothing. If you align it correctly in the SFF, you don't have to align anything when you do it with your sparks. And everything here is pretty straightforward. You should know most of this already. Now, 2 things you're going to add for this is P1 sprite priority equals 3. I have it here, but for some reason, Mugen doesn't play nice with that. And the helper will appear behind the player. So putting this here forces the helper on top of the player, which adds the effect of a beam coming from their hand. And this may not affect the player, but it's always good to have a get power equals 0 when you're doing a super. I have a transcode because I want a transparent. And then I have a change state code when time equals 50, which is, let's see, 50, yeah, okay, 50 is about here. So yeah, this is 50 actually, take 50. So once this frame is done, it's going to change state to 3011. And 3011, I'm using Mugen here basically with this angle draw code to scale the beam down into nothing and destroying itself. So this could be tricky, and I'll get to this in a second. But let's start from the beam summoning part. So this part's already coded in Mugen, so I'll just show it to you. Okay, so now the super, there's the shining, the spark, and then beam on the 5th, and then beam shooting out. After 50 ticks, scales down, disappears. If I can catch it in time. Yep, scaling down, disappearing. So you see how flawless it looks? And let's do a hitbox. There you go, see? So now let's hit the other person. There you go. You got yourself a beam. Now there are a few things to be aware of when doing this. If you corner the opponent and you hit them with a beam, the beam will slide off of you. The reason why is the beam acts as a person, and corner push affects it. So to fix that, we have to set the corner push and the hit depth for the helper to 0. I do not recall all of the corner push codes in the top of my head, so what we're going to do is make another hit depth code, erase everything else I don't need, get to corner push, erase everything else I don't need again. I'm lost. There, and there we go, corner push codes. You have the ground, air, down guard, and air guard, and everything's at 0. So now adding these codes alone will just stop the beam from sliding off the corner of the screen. Let's check that out. There you go. Now the beam looks more believable. This is 9 hits. So say we want the beam to hit more. If you use a time mod 5 equals 0 code, it's hitting, you know, every 5 ticks pretty much. So if I wanted to do like a 3, let's go with 3, seems safer, and go with that, then we can do that. And then from 9 hits, you're suddenly going up to 15 hits. And I think 15 is a good number. It's not too much and it's not too little. But let's say I want to go more. So I'll do time mod 2. If you do anything less than time mod 2, time mod 1, it's essentially the same as putting every tick, every frame. You know, trigger 1 equals 1. That's what that is pretty much. Okay. And as you see, it works. However, Kung Fu Man's hand retreats before the beam's finished. And there you go. Insta beam. So it's 22 hits, but we want it to be, let's say, I want to limit it to 17 hits. So for the change state at the bottom, what I would do is I would put 2 of these lines. I'm not sure what they're called. It's above the enter key. But 2 of them together means OR. And I'll use unique hit count equals 17. So once the hit count is 17, it's just gonna end the state, send it to the end state. See? and the beam ends perfectly on time. Ideally, if you wanted to make it a much longer beam, you could just increase Kung Fu Man's time, adding more frames to his palm being out, which would also extend that. So now let's go to the end state. If you noticed or did not notice, the end state of the beam is not transparent. So the beam's transparent here, note the pillar. And then when it ends, it's not transparent. So we are going to add a transcode here. Let's use add 1. Oh, by the way, it's very important when you do things like trans, always include an ignore-hit-pause. It's not necessary for this one, but just include it anyway, it's good practice. Okay, and then yeah, we have the angle draw to scale it down. So here's the science behind this. And this always confuses me because it works one way or the other way. So it could work like this also. It could work like this. But right now, for this exact instance, is working better like this. What's the difference? I have no idea, but Mugen takes it differently. But basically what I'm saying is, because this is a constant trigger here, trigger when it goes 1, value meaning he's not rotating anywhere, but yeah, for scale, so the X scale is staying the same and the Y scale is losing 0.1 decimal from 1 every tick. So that's gonna be, it's gonna be 1, 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, 0.6, 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, and then 0. Okay, 0. So you start here, and every tick you're losing this much. So that'll pretty much take you down like this. And after 10 ticks, you're pretty much at 1 or you're at 0. I'm not counting. So that after that is that. So now if your destroy self is not this, say that we use 100, this beam is gonna increase dramatically instead of shrink down, disappear. Which is funny to watch, actually. See? I could kill somebody. But yeah, so that's why you gotta time your destroy self with this. But using numbers like 1 is easy. You can also use like 0.5. Oh, 0.05, sorry. And then it would be 1, 0.95, oh, that's not supposed to be there. 0.9, 0.85, 0.8. It will go down like this. So it'll be slower. And then you would need time 20 to match that up. So let's just go over the example here with this. See, so the beam goes slower. But I like it fast the way it is. Okay, so that's how the beam shrinks. This is the actual beam itself, and this is the summon code for the beam. Another thing which I forgot to mention, for beams, depending on how you do it, you can use a fall code. Personally, I use an if-else code for fall. So it'll be if-else, and then you go P2 state type equals A, meaning the player is in the air, then yes, they will fall. If they're not in the air, then no, they will not fall. And this works wonders because you could code 2 hit deaths, but why do that when you can code 1 and get the same results? So this is standing, he's still standing, and then oops, and then jumping, he somehow landed on time. Okay, and then standing, there you go. In the air, he's just bouncing on the beam. So now we have to change velocities for air and everything, but I mean, this is straightforward. There we go. Maybe 1 might be better, probably. We shall find out. Yeah, I mean, that works. It's not the best, but it works. And yeah, that is pretty much how you code a beam in Mugen the proper way. There are other ways to code beams. Never use a projectile code. It'll come out wrong every single time. doing beam collisions is a very difficult thing that it's not easily done with non-compatible characters. It works best inside of a full game aspect, but if you're making a character to have a beam struggle with someone else, it's a very difficult thing to code. I personally do not know how to code it, but I wouldn't be able to help you beyond that point. But yeah, so that is a beam super special move thing in 3 states. Shrinking, the actual beam itself, which is very small when you think about it, and then the startup for the beam. Oh, by the way, it's worth showing. I did not do this for any reason in particular. I'm just doing this for the hell of it. So I'm going to rotate it. Let's do plus 45 times time. So now the beam's going to rotate ridiculously for no reason at all. Isn't that genius? Ha 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 ha. No reason at all. It doesn't affect the hitboxes, by the way. This only affects the it only affects the way it looks, not the hitboxes. You still have to make your hitboxes like this. Better than this, but you get the point. Alrighty. Well, that's it for now. Thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.